I will start the speech in 3, 2, 1. I, Luis, as the first speaker of the cruising government, will rebut some points that have been made by the opposing opposition. First rebuttal, that is, it is not their money to begin with. Furthermore, they have stolen the people's money, so it is only logical that the government take back what was lost by the corruptors and give them a fine for what they have done, because they have taken the people's money. And that will give them the deterrent effect needed, and it will make them stop doing corruption. On to the second rebuttal, and that is about opening opposition 1 and opening opposition 2, stating that by impoverishing the corruptors, we only add more burden to the country's economy. I beg to differ, because if we see the amount of money that is being taken by the corruptors versus the money that is allocated, that can be allocated to overcome poverty, it turns out that the corruptors actually take much more money rather than the money to overcome poverty. So we cannot really say that it is adding more burden, because we actually are helping the economy by not letting the corruptors take the money. And by so, I can say that it is illogical to think that it is only adding more burden to the government's economy. On to my third, and if the opposition thought that it is violating the human rights, I have to state that by violating the human rights in the first place, corruptors have taken the people's money, and that is violating the people's right to have infrastructure that is built by the country, because the corruptors take the money for that. Infrastructures are not being built, and that's so. That being said, corruptors are violating the people's right to have a good infrastructure, and that's so. Eye for an eye. That means human rights, if taken by the corruptors' human rights also have to be taken in a form that we have to punish them by making them impoverished. On to my fourth point, and that is, we are not taking all of the corruptors' money, by the way. We are only taking money that has been corrupted by them and a portion of their wealth as a fine. So they actually feel what the people that they have made suffer feel. So if the corruptors have never felt this way, they will never see the scope through the scope of the poor people that they have caused. For example, the corruption of EID for the country. The EID ones have been halted for the whole 6 months because of the money for the EID has been halted because it has been corrupted. And it created a very long list of printed EID because of the money to print that has been taken. And that's so. It creates a whole lot of inconvenience for the rest of the people. And if we actually implement the rule of taking monies from the corruptors by impoverishing them, we actually can make them feel what we common people feel. On to my fifth point, and that is, there is a difference between living in less wealth and living in prison. And it is a very big difference. Living in prison will cause you will not be able to get a job when you get out later because you have a criminal record. Not many company and workplace will be able to accept you because you have a criminal record. But if you live in less wealth, you have a bigger chance to get off from poverty because of you can still be able to work. You are still able to find ways to get more money and get out from your situation right now. By saying that, it is a bit irrational to think that putting people in prison is actually better than putting people in less wealth. On to my sixth point, I have to state that death row is not the same as impoverishment, because death row has different effects to impoverishment. Death row only give effects to the one that is given death row, and after being killed legally, there is nothing else. There is no more torture, and that's it. That's done. But in impoverishment, you actually still need to live, and still need to live in a different lifestyle than you have before. For example, you are a wealthy man and you start to live in less wealth. You need to adapt to your new lifestyle, and to most wealthy people, it is pretty torturous to change their lifestyle, because it is, well, they once lived with a lot of royalty and a lot of conveniences, but then they became impoverished and they need to adapt to less inconvenient situation and less royalty, and that sometimes gives them enough deterrent effect to actually stop doing corruption. And my last point to rebut is that rehabilitation is not actually solving the problem. People that is once rehab is just, okay, I got rehab and was set free. It will only create an uprising from the people, because they felt it is unfair that someone that have taken so much money from the government, from the tax money, just to be released back to the society just like that without any repercussions. It is violating the voice of justice. It is not fair for the people that have actually paid the taxes. So from this, I have to state that it is only fair to impoverish, and we as the closing government proudly stands to defend this motion.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. So I'm Natasha, and I'm the second speaker of the closing government in this debate. So first, I will deliver additional information and details about several points from the rebuttal that have been delivered by the first speaker of the closing governments. So as we know that the opposition side say that the statement of impoverishing the corruptor is one thing that can improve or can increase the country's burden. But here, I want to highlight something that's important, that we should consider the comparisons between two groups. The small one, which is it concludes the corruptor and also the family, and the second one is the huge amount of the country's citizens. Let's take an example. During this pandemic, our Indonesian government provides a lot of assistance for the citizens. Like some poor people got the money from the government because some of them lost their job and could not fulfill their needs well. But here, there are some irresponsible people that try to reduce the amount of money that the citizens receive. And for sure, it will give a bad impact for the citizens because they could not buy the basic needs that they have. And for sure, it will increase the number of poverty in our countries. Remember that Indonesia tried to reduce the amount of poverty number because it becomes one of our goals in achieving SDGs in 2030. Because of this case and problem, our government tried to find the other things or the other solution in order to overcome this kind of problem. And then, let's talk about the small groups which concludes about the characters and also the family. Let's say, in the worst case, if they live under the poverty line, we should remember that the government also gives the assistance for the poor people. For example, like the basic needs, or in Indonesia we usually call it as sembako, and then for the other social facilities like the health facilities and so on. So we can say that they can still live appropriately. And then, more than that, we also remember that putting the corruptors in jails is not always a good choice. If the opposition side before that the impoverishing the corruptors can make them become the poor, actually the jail also can give the same impact. When the people who have already jailed, they usually have a criminal record, and we should remember that some company or business will ask the candidates to submit the SKCK or Surat Keterangan Catatan Kepolisian in Indonesia that prove this respective persons does not have several criminal actions. We know that the company don't want to have the employee that do the criminal actions because it can make the company's reputations bad. That's why when the corruptors is put in jail, it means when they get out from the jail, they also can get the appropriate job as well. Then for the third point, it also talks about the rehabilitations as one of the solutions or alternative to give the deterrent effect for the corruptors. This point, which has been delivered by the opposition side, is actually not relevant. Why? Because actually this action or this solution is not equal for the society. We will see that this punishment is too light for the corruptors, and it will not give the deterrent effect for them. And many people, perhaps they only think that perhaps it's okay to do the corruptions because they can get a lot of money, they can enjoy it, and after that they just need to do the rehabilitation. After that they can go out and enjoy the things that they have. That's why in our side we believe that impoverishing the culture is the one thing that the government should do. And then for the next part, I will conclude the points that have already delivered by the opening governments. We should remember that here the corruptor means that the people who stole the billion rupiahs from the government, also from the country. And impoverishing the corruptor is the one thing or the one kind of punishment that can be chosen by our state. Here, impoverishing means that the corruptor should pay back 100% of money taken from the corruption actions and some more from their all assets except the primary one. The primary asset here means that the asset that they use to live, but it means that we try to eliminate the luxury aspect here. And the government side believe that these actions can deter the corruptors because we try to put them as the regular people like the others. And with these conditions, they can experience what actually the usual people or the poor people experience every day, like what the pain and also the suffers that they usually get every day. And that's why the corruptors will not do the same actions again. So that's all for me. That's why I'm very proud to purpose these motions.